One morning, Private Detective Jackson received an assignment from his boss, Ree. His target was Bob, the husband of a client who had endured repeated abuse. Jackson tracked Bob to a gym, where he found him struggling with a set of weights. Stepping in to help, Jackson used the moment to warn him to stop hurting his wife. The friendly gesture quickly soured, and Bob, offended by the interference, prepared to attack. He never walked away from trouble. This is Trouble Man. Jackson calmly set his jacket aside, but Bob struck first. Jackson blocked, countered, and kicked him back. The fight intensified, yet Bob's blows could not break through Jackson's defense. Even when Bob grabbed a weapon, Jackson dodged skillfully and struck until Bob collapsed on the floor. Sitting beside him, Jackson advised him to resolve his problems without violence, perhaps even make peace with his wife through a gift. When Bob continued to glare, Jackson hinted at another strike. That was enough to break him. Bob apologized and promised to change. With the job done, Jackson walked away. Meanwhile, singer Jiari was in the studio, still struggling to record the perfect take after working through the night. Exhausted, she finally asked to stop and try again later. The producer agreed, reminding her to deliver a better performance next time. Outside, Jiari called her boyfriend, then impatiently scolded her driver for being slow to open the door. She never realized the driver had been replaced. Moments later, she was kidnapped. That night, Jackson was working as head of security at a nightclub. After checking in with a staff member, he entered the restroom and caught a familiar face engaged in a shady deal. Giving the man a choice, Jackson told him to hand over the goods or face arrest. The dealer chose to resist and attacked, but Jackson subdued him in seconds.
Boom and his boy from off the floor.
He then called a colleague to escort the man out. Outside, Jackson met Ree, who took him to the office and handed him payment for his earlier work. While reviewing CCTV footage, Jackson noticed someone from his past and left immediately. It was Gina, his ex-girlfriend. They reminisced about old times, and when she asked about his work, Jackson simply said he was a security guard with a few side jobs. He invited her to stay the night, but she said she needed plans first. Without hesitation, he made them, and that night, they were together again. The next morning, Jackson woke to find Gina gone. Before he could think much of it, a delivery arrived. As he opened the door, two men forced their way inside. One of them, Dave, pointed a gun at him and said their boss, Holland, wanted a meeting. Jackson disliked being threatened. He argued with Dave, using the moment to close the distance. In a sudden burst of movement, he disarmed him, tossed the gun aside, and knocked one man to the ground. Dave tried to fight back, but Jackson overpowered him with ease. Dragging both men to the elevator, he handed them over to his friend Willis to handle. Without wasting time, Jackson stormed into Holland's office, demanding payment for the damage to his home. Holland admitted he had called Jackson for a job. Jiari, one of his singers, had been kidnapped. Jackson suggested going to the police, but Holland refused, fearing it would destroy both her career and his company. Jiari had recently been caught using drugs again, and another scandal would be devastating. After a moment's thought, Jackson agreed to take the job, asking for an advance and warning that success was not guaranteed. Holland paid without argument. On his way out, Jackson slipped money to Holland's secretary, Lonnie, in exchange for information about Jiari's recent movements. Back in the office, Holland took a tense phone call. He tried to assure the caller that everything was under control, but the person on the other end disagreed and abruptly hung up, leaving him seething. Later at the nightclub, Jackson approached Ree to request time off. When he explained the job, Ree was frustrated that he was getting involved with Jiari again. Jackson insisted she might be in danger. Ree told him Jiari had last been seen with a man named Money. Moments later, Jackson received a text from Gina, asking him to come over. He arrived with flowers, apologizing for ignoring her calls. When she pressed for the reason, he admitted he was searching for someone. She demanded a name, and he finally said it was Jiari. The mention of Jiari immediately changed Gina's mood. She believed Jiari had once written a song for him and wanted no part of the situation. Jackson tried to explain that he had only been her bodyguard and simply wanted to finish the job, but Gina turned away, unwilling to get involved. Soon after, Jackson arrived at Money's headquarters. He caught the group before they went inside and asked to speak with him privately. Inside, Jackson explained he was looking for Jiari. Money said she was fine and claimed they had only just met, though he admitted she had problems with Holland. When she didn't answer his call, Money agreed to take Jackson to her place. They arrived to find the house in disarray, with no sign of Jiari. Jackson quietly pocketed an invitation card he noticed among the mess. Money, furious, wanted to start searching immediately, but Jackson urged him to wait. Without a lead, it would be a waste of time. He asked for a few days to find her, promising to hand the matter over if he failed. The next day, Jackson followed the address he had found at Jahari's place to a lavish party. Holland was there, and his surprise at seeing Jackson was obvious. Jackson explained that he was gathering leads, especially after learning about Jahari's dispute with Holland's management. Holland brushed him off and made his way to meet Ewan, a wealthy Asian investor. Curious, Jackson asked Lonnie who Ewan was. She explained that Ewan funded both the party and Holland's company, making them close allies. To Jackson's surprise, Gina was also at the event, running the entire operation. When Gina stepped away, Jackson approached Ewan and said he was looking for information on Jiari. Ewan admitted she knew her, but refused to elaborate. When he pressed about her connection to Holland, her bodyguard moved in, ready for a fight. Ewan stopped him, insisting her ties to Holland were purely business. Gina returned and asked why Jackson was there. He congratulated her on the event and turned to leave, but she stopped him, wanting to speak privately. Meanwhile, Ewan scolded her two men, Fong and Lang, for almost starting trouble with Jackson, then dismissed them. Outside, Jackson told Gina he could not involve her in his work because he wanted to protect her. She reminded him that she was not someone who needed rescuing. Realizing his mistake, Jackson asked for another chance, and she agreed. They spent the night together. The next morning, as they left the apartment, a motorcycle gunman opened fire. Jackson shielded Gina and Willis, grabbed Willis's drop gun, and chased the attackers. He managed to kick one rider, but when his gun jammed, he had to dodge a blow. The shooters escaped, leaving a helmet behind. Back at the scene, Jackson saw that Gina had been shot in the arm. Willis had already called an ambulance, and at the hospital, Jackson told the police what happened before checking on Gina, who was still shaken. Determined to act, Jackson went home for his own gun and called Money. Pretending the search for Jiari was still underway, he asked for help. Money agreed to guard Gina at the hospital while Jackson visited the Asian Mafia headquarters to trace the helmet. The gang was uncooperative, and when two men tried to ambush him, Jackson used the helmet's reflection to read their movements and strike first. More attackers joined in, but he fought them all off, using the helmet as a weapon and firing warning shots to scatter them. Eventually, one man revealed the truth. The attackers had been hired by Holland. Enraged, Jackson confronted Holland at gunpoint, demanding answers about Jiari and Ewan. Holland admitted his company was drowning in debt to Ewan. She had offered to erase it in exchange for taking over his business, but he refused. In retaliation, Ewan kidnapped Jiari to force his surrender, planning to sell the company at a profit. Holland confessed that he had secretly hired Jackson to find Jiari without Ewan's knowledge, but when she learned of the plan, she ordered him killed. He also admitted that his claim about Jahari's drug relapse had been a lie to push Jackson into helping. Jackson's anger boiled over. Ewan's scheme had put Jahari's life in danger and left Gina wounded. Keeping his weapon trained on Holland, he demanded every detail he knew about her. At the hospital, Gina was playing cards with Money when Jackson returned. Money quietly stepped out, giving them a moment alone. Jackson apologized for putting her in danger and promised it would all be over soon. But Gina had already made up her mind. Life with him was too risky, and she could not stay. Jackson understood and walked away, unwilling to pull her any deeper into harm's way. Outside, he thanked Money for looking after her and invited him along, saying he had a lead on Jiari. Meanwhile, Ewan had Holland backed into a corner. Her men accused him of leaking information after hearing about Jackson's attack on one of her mafia crews. Holland denied it, but Fong and Lang beat him down. Ewan revealed she knew he had hired hitmen from her network to make it appear as if her people were behind the attack. She gave him 2 days to repay his debt, then left him bleeding in the street. Not long after, Jackson and Money arrived near Ewan's headquarters. The guards were few, but at the same moment, Fong and Lang returned. Jackson considered walking through the front entrance, yet Money suggested a rooftop approach using gear he had brought. From above, Jackson tossed gas canisters into the building, filling it with a sharp, choking smell. Inside, Jiari was being escorted to the bathroom by a guard. At that same moment, Rhee and his crew arrived to create a distraction. Disguised as workers, they claimed there was a gas leak. Rhee tried to head upstairs, but Fong blocked him, saying Jiari was there. He called for her guard, unaware she had already knocked the man out. Jackson and Money reached Jahari's room, only to find it empty. On a lower floor, they discovered her unconscious guard and decided to split up. Meanwhile, Fong realized Jahari had escaped and began searching the building. Elsewhere, Money crossed paths with Yuan's men. Ree tried to intervene, but was ignored. Smashing through a ventilation wall, Ree allowed the gas to escape outside. Following footprints, Jackson found Jahari hiding in the bathroom. He told her to stay put while he went to look for Money. Yuan's men put down their guns, challenging Money to fight barehanded. He lit a cigarette, but they kicked it away. Enraged, he reached for his gun, only for Ree to warn him that any spark could ignite the gas.
If you shoot that gun, we'll all go up. That's bullshit.
Forced into hand-to-hand combat, Money fought alongside Ree's crew, while Ree scrambled to recover the cigarette. When he did, it was kicked again, this time sparking a fire. The gas did not explode, but flames began spreading quickly. Money tried to rush back for Jahari, but Ree's men held him back. Meanwhile, Jackson ran into Fong. Before he could draw his weapon, Lang attacked from behind, kicking it away. Outnumbered, Jackson was beaten to the ground.
You are such a disgrace.
Fong took the gun and fired, but the bullet struck his vest and failed to penetrate. Believing he was dead, they left. Jackson forced himself back up and returned for Jahari, determined to get her out before the fire consumed the building. Outside, Ree's men dragged Money to safety. Ree told him Jackson had already rescued Jahari. Later, Yuan prepared to punish Fong and Lang for losing Jahari and destroying the base, but Fong insisted they still had a way to strike back. A few hours later, Jackson and Jahari were treated at the hospital. Money arrived and hugged Jahari in relief. With her safe, he was ready to take revenge on Holland, but Jackson calmed him, saying Yuan had likely already dealt with him. Jahari then admitted she feared Yuan would still come after her because she was bound by a contract with Holland's management. She could not escape without it. Jackson promised to help, reminding her they had known each other for years. When Jackson went to check on Gina, her room was empty. After asking around, he learned she had gone to Holland's office. Realizing the danger, Jackson and Money rushed to find her. At that same time, Holland was being tortured by Fong for the heavy losses he had caused Yuan. On the way, Jackson called Lonnie and told her to stop Gina before it was too late. At that moment, Gina stepped into Holland's office, and Lonnie quickly handed her the phone. Jackson's voice was urgent, warning her to leave immediately because Yuan was dangerous. Moments later, Yuan appeared, forcing Gina to hang up and excuse herself to the bathroom. Since Yuan had no idea she had spoken to Jackson, she allowed her to go without suspicion. Not long after, Yuan left an unconscious Holland to focus on capturing Gina and Lonnie. But when her men returned, Gina had already vanished. Frustrated, Yuan ordered them to find her at once. Meanwhile, Jackson and Money arrived at the building fully armed. Smashing through the parking barrier, they drew Yuan and her men downstairs, where gunfire erupted and both sides clashed. Inside, Gina searched for an escape route via the stairs, but turned back when she heard approaching footsteps. She did not realize it was Jackson, moving quickly through the building to avoid Yuan's guards. He fought them off one by one, determined to find her. Elsewhere, Yuan prepared to retreat after losing many of her men, only to run into Money, who had just taken down her guards. She still managed to slip away, and shortly after, Money discovered Holland lying in his office. Upstairs, Jackson once again faced Fong and Lang. They taunted him about his earlier defeat, but he told them he had not been fighting at full strength before. This time, he launched into the fight with everything he had. Matching their speed and power, he battled both at once. When they switched to weapons, he struggled briefly, but began reading their movements, eventually disarming them. Fong fell first, followed by Lang. Yuan was stunned to see her best men defeated. Jackson told her he was not there to attack, only to save Gina. Before she could respond, a scream echoed through the air. It was Lonnie, tied to a chair and dangling over a drop. Jackson had no choice but to engage. Ewan tossed her sword sheath to distract him before charging. Jackson caught the sheath, used it to block her strikes, and countered with precision. His skill caught her off guard, and he managed to wound her. Enraged, Ewan cut the rope holding Lonnie, nearly sending her plummeting, but Jackson caught her at the last moment. Before Ewan could strike again, Gina appeared with a high-pressure water hose and blasted her off the building, ending the fight. Jackson pulled Lonnie to safety, untied her, and left with Gina. Downstairs, Jackson entered Holland's office to find Money already inside. When Jackson asked about Jiari's contract, Money revealed he had forced Holland to sign over the property to him. He urged them to leave quickly, wanting no part of the scene any longer. Outside, Jackson helped Holland and Lonnie into a car, while Money unexpectedly detonated explosives, destroying Holland's office to erase any evidence. He handed Jackson the keys to his own car as thanks for saving Jiari and declared that they were now brothers who would always have each other's backs. In the final moments, Jackson and Gina kissed, their mission complete and their relationship finally made official. So the moral of the story is, if your love life feels complicated, just add explosions and martial arts. It solves everything faster.